After watching all 6 Minions and Despicable Me movies, it's safe to say that everyone has become a fan of this incredible animated franchise. But even after almost 15 years of movies, have you noticed all the details and Easter eggs hidden in Gru's films and his team of minions? For instance, in Despicable Me 3, when Drew tells his twin brother that their father always kept track of the Minions' boss, many of us wondered how exactly he managed to do that. The answer, believe it or not, lies in the very first movie, right at the beginning. When Gru goes to the door to meet his future daughters who are selling cookies, you can see that on his wall, there are framed newspaper articles featuring his picture with headlines about him being a top villain. And that's not all. If you look closely, you'll notice that in one of the newspapers, there's a story about Lucy's future husband being chosen as the villain of the year. And if you look even closer, you'll see that in the photo, our beloved Gru still had a full head of thick black hair, somewhat like Brad, the villain of the movie. This suggests that it happened a long time ago, perhaps when Gru had just graduated from the LPB School for Supervillains. And that might explain why he was so upset when Maxime won the award at the beginning of Despicable Me 4. So yeah, I bet you didn't notice that 15-year-old detail. Check out our list of 20 references and Easter eggs. It's mind-blowing. So let's dive in, because Cinewave is kicking off once again. If you've ever watched any Jackie Chan movie or cartoon, one of the greatest martial artists in action and comedy, you might have noticed a bit of his character in Minions 2. That's because Master Chow was inspired by the great Chinese Hollywood star. Even her fighting moves were inspired by the actor and his movies. But he wasn't the only martial arts legend to be used as inspiration in the second Minions movie. That's because the greatest martial arts actor of all time is referenced several times in the Minions movies. For example, when the Minions and Knuckles face off against the Vicious Six, we see Kevin transformed into a rabbit and he swipes his paw across his nose. This is a clear reference to the same gesture Bruce Lee often made in many of his kung fu films. Similarly, the outfit worn by the main trio of Minions is also a clear reference to the yellow jumpsuit Bruce Lee wore in the movie Enter the Dragon. Going back to the first movie, we see that when Gru visits the evil bank, there's a sign above the bank for villains that reads Lehman Brothers. This made sense in the film, which was released in 2010, as Lehman Brothers had gone bankrupt and collapsed just 2 years earlier. However, if we go back in time and move forward in the films, in Minions 2, which takes place in 1976, we see Knuckles and Gru enter the same bank, but 40 years earlier. So here's the question. If the evil bank was created after Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008, how did it exist in 1976? And if you're a fan of the Minions and Gru, drop a comment below with the name of your favorite Minion. Mine is Mel. What's yours? Throughout Minions 2 and Despicable Me 3, there are several moments where we see the Minions getting into situations involving pink toilet paper. The interesting thing is that pink toilet paper was invented in France, which just so happens to be the country where the Minions and Gru were created. In fact, the voice actor for the Minions and the director of the first 3 films in the franchise, Pierre Coffin, is French. Now let me ask you a question. Did you know that the original idea was for the Minions to be biologically engineered by Gru and multiply through cellular division? We find some evidence of this in the first movie, where in the scene where Gru is in the girls' room, you can see a blueprint featuring the Minions suggesting they were designed. Regarding the multiplication of these little yellow beings, in the animated short Training Day, the training opening sequence shows the Minions dividing like cells. But everything was later reimagined, as these yellow beings became hugely popular, leading to a new backstory for some of the most famous characters in the animated world. In fact, if we take a close look at the girls' room decor, we can even spot not 1, but 3 robotic versions of the Minions on the shelf near the Mona Lisa picture. This indicates that the yellow beings were initially envisioned as part biological, part mechanical in the creator's original idea. One of them even reappears in Mel's memories when he's in prison, recalling Gru. This shows that the robots are still around, but now they're in Gru's lab. Another detail we can notice in Margot, Edith, and Agnes's room is that there are miniatures on the other shelf of Gru's 2 main vehicles, his spaceship and the car he always parks so subtly on the streets of his city. In the second Minions movie, we see the sad Otto riding a unicycle after feeling down for losing Gru's Zodiac Stone. As we watch him do this, we see the Minion pedaling so fast that he overtakes a motorcyclist. That guy on the motorcycle is none other than Evel Knievel, the greatest stuntman in US history. Outpacing a professional stuntman on a unicycle is definitely not something an ordinary being could do. Could Otto be the first Mega Minion? Because pedaling like that is definitely not normal. And we can see that there are even some hidden Minions throughout various moments in the films that we only noticed after years. For example, when Gru is playing Tea Party with the girls, we see 3 Minions present in the scene. Can you spot them? First, we have a normal-sized minion, and in his hand, we see a mini-minion, who shrank thanks to the shrink ray that Gru and his minions stole. And lastly, there's a third minion, hiding in the painting on the wall near the carnivorous plant. In the beautiful oil painting, we see a small, lonely yellow being at the edge of a pond, gazing at the moon. Pretty poetic, I must admit. And if you also enjoy watching videos about cartoons and animated movies, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We post new videos every day! One of the bossiest members of the Vicious Six is definitely Jean-Claude, who has a mechanical crab claw. You probably already knew that, but what you might not know, along with many others, is that this character was inspired by the psychotic villains from the movie A Clockwork Orange, which was released in 1972, 4 years before the events of Minions 2. His outfit and hat are identical to those of Alex, the leader of the gang. In fact, the name of this Vicious Six villain was created as a tribute to Jean-Claude Van Damme, a famous action movie star from the 80s and 90s. And Van Damme was the voice actor for Jean-Claude in Minions 2. This is such a cool tribute to this iconic movie star. Now, talking about the purple minions, those terrifying versions of the minions developed by Dr. Nefario for El Macho, did you know that their design was inspired by a character from Looney Tunes? It's from an episode of Tweety and Sylvester, where the little yellow bird takes a potion that transforms him back and forth into a huge monster that terrorizes poor Sylvester. Of course, this was the inspiration for the transformed minions design, especially since their color changed completely. But Looney Tunes characters aren't the only ones parodied in the Despicable Me films, including in this same second movie. That's because in one of the underwater scenes where Gru, Lucy, and 2 minions are underwater in mini submarines, we can see that Gru's minions swim past 2 clownfish and apparently kill one of them. And then, the minions even laugh about what they did. This is a clear reference to Pixar's Finding Nemo, released in 2004. The scene suggests that Nemo's mom might have died in a different way than what Marlin told his little son. When the minions are in line to get tattoos, if you look towards the end of the line, you'll notice that one of the little yellow beings is literally sleeping. He's probably the same minion who's sleeping on the cafeteria bench during the food fight that the minions have just before they escape the place. It seems like there's always one minion who's perpetually sleepy. After getting out of prison, the minions go to help Gru and try to pop Brat's giant bubblegum, and notice that one of the yellow beings is using a sword for this. But it accidentally slips and ends up flying through the air, eventually hitting another minion. But don't worry, when we slow down the footage, we see that it's actually the sword's hilt, not the blade, that hits the poor guy. Phew! In Despicable Me 3, we see Gru and Drew infiltrate Brat's headquarters to recover the item the villain had stolen. And check out their outfits! Tight suits in completely different colors, with Gru in black and Drew in white. This is a reference to the classic Spy vs. Spy comics and cartoons, where we see 2 identical characters, like Gru and Drew, constantly playing pranks on each other, one dressed in black and the other in white. Fun fact, in the comic, the 2 spies are also twin brothers. We're wrapping up this video, but not before leaving you with 2 awesome video options that you can watch right now if you want. Click on the one you want to see first, and then let me know if you enjoyed it. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching!